never remembered climbing the stairs, but when he opened his eyes again, his knees were raw, and ash coated his fingers like dust from an ancient tomb. Above him, a sky that didn't belong to New York stretched infinitely, a dome of cracked concrete and bone-colored clouds pulsing faintly as if stitched together by invisible threads. The air was colder here, not just in temperature, but in emotion, the kind of cold that comes with unbearable knowledge. There were no city sounds, no wind, no echo, only silence, and it wasn't empty. It watched him. There was something monstrous about the quiet here. Like everything he had ever questioned was listening for confirmation. Around him stood statues, faceless saints, subway conductors with hollow eyes, and mothers clutching candles that dripped ink instead of wax. Each statue bore his name, carved over someone else's. He had not entered a higher place. He had entered memory's graveyard. Like, subscribe, and stay with us till the end. He walked forward slowly, across a platform made of old train doors fused with rosary chains. Above the ruins of what looked like a broken chapel, a single phrase burned in red flame across a stone arch. All truth requires a witness. All witnesses are built from pain. The chapel was open air, shaped like an old subway hub but without a ceiling. Instead, a vast skylight revealed the cracked underside of a city floating above, barely visible through rippling distortion. New York, inverted, flickering like a mirage, suspended over the forgotten world that had carried its guilt for over a century. He stepped inside. Beneath the altar, he found a bench carved from coffin wood. On it lay dozens of subway tokens, some rusted, some pristine, and a single pristine envelope with his name etched in gold. Not pen, etched. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a photo of himself, taken just 3 hours ago, stepping off the airplane. But behind him in the photo was the veiled woman, holding a candle. Behind her the same chapel he now stood inside, and in her hand a piece of paper that read, Subject 42, Return denied, Descent authorized. His mind broke in layers. He wasn't just discovering the cult's truth. He had been expected. The moment he looked away from the photo, the chapel shifted. Not physically, but in gravity, in sound, in presence, as if the air had changed its mind about pretending to be air. The statues lining the walls began to weep, slow rivulets of black liquid dripping from their faceless forms onto the stone floor. Each drop hissed on contact, burning symbols into the ground that glowed faintly like subway maps drawn in veins. Elias staggered back, heart racing, but the air held him like a cradle, firm, inescapable, suffocating. The envelope in his hand crumbled to dust. In its place was now a leather-bound book, sealed shut with wire and soaked in wax. It bore the sigil he had seen only once before, tattooed on his mother's left shoulder, which she always told him was a birthmark. The book pulsed like it was breathing. With trembling fingers, he pried it open, and what he found wasn't written in words, but in memories. Searing, precise, cinematic memories that weren't his. Children speaking languages they were never taught. A man being buried alive beneath track 6 while others chanted his name. A veiled woman walking into the subway tunnel carrying a lantern made of spine bone. Each memory ended with the same phrase carved into a subway wall. There is no God in steel, only sacrifice. His mother had been one of them, one of the witnesses. That's why she came to New York in '99. That's why she disappeared for 3 months and never spoke of what happened. And that's why she spent her final year in that silent stupor, clutching subway tokens like they were prayers. Elias now understood. The cult didn't worship a deity. They recorded suffering. They believed salvation wasn't earned, but remembered. And if no one remembered the pain, it would return. He wasn't here to expose their truth. He was here to carry it. He should have run. Any sane man would. But Elias felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing through walls that weren't there. Memories watching him from cracks in the chapel stone, from stains on the altar, from the blood-soaked pages now fluttering free inside the book. He turned one carefully, and it stuck to his fingers warm. The page pulsed, and suddenly he was somewhere else. Not in a vision, not dreaming, inhabiting. A boy, maybe 10, crawling through a subway ventilation shaft in 1912, clutching a satchel of letters, whispering verses in Yiddish. Another page. He was a teenage girl in 1967, painting subway tokens with mercury, while a voice hummed hymns behind her, promising freedom if she'd just forget her mother's name. He flipped page after page, absorbing centuries of sorrow, guilt, terror. And then, he landed in his own body, but not in the present. A winter afternoon, a hospital room, his mother still conscious, begging someone off camera to hide him deeper this time. She was crying over an envelope, the same envelope from the chapel. A nurse asked who she was talking to. "No one," she whispered, "but he always hears me near trains." The vision snapped. He fell to the stone floor, retching. The book had vanished. In its place stood a figure. Back turned, veil trailing behind, candle held aloft. The same woman from the photo, from the airport, from the chapel's stained glass reflection. "Why me?" he croaked. Her voice was smoke and water. "Because you were never you. You were a vessel waiting to be reclaimed." The ground beneath him cracked, not from weight, but from recognition. The doctrine wasn't a belief system. It was a memory palace, and Elias had just unlocked its final room, and it had his name above the door. Elias stood on legs that no longer felt like his. The chapel was gone, or perhaps it had always been an echo, just one memory in a sequence designed to lead him here. Stone melted into tile, candles into fluorescent flicker. He was in the subway again, alone. Track 6, except the station was silent in a way that made sound itself feel extinct. A rusted sign above the platform blinked, "Chambers, St." A station supposedly closed in 1946, but the tiles were wet, freshly cleaned, and beneath the rails, something pulsed, not light, not heat. Breath. He turned, heart punching his ribs. At the far end of the tunnel, a wooden confessional booth stood upright, absurdly pristine. No dust, no graffiti, no explanation, and inside, a velvet seat and an envelope. Another one, his name written in red. He stepped inside. The door slammed behind him. Then a voice, one he hadn't heard since he was 8, his grandfather's voice, spoke from the other side of the partition. "Tell me, Elias, if pain was the only thing keeping the world together, would you end it, or preserve it?" He couldn't answer. He wasn't sure who the question was really for. The air inside the booth grew cold. Photographs slid from the ceiling. His childhood, his mother's disappearances, police reports, audio transcripts from cult hearings he never knew existed. One photograph showed him sleeping as a boy, with the veiled woman standing by his bed. "You are not the last witness," the voice whispered. "You are the archive." He fell to his knees. His blood, his silence, his unquestioned life. It had all been curated, shaped by shadows older than him. He had always thought grief was random, but now he saw it. Grief was engineered, and someone was ready for him to finally take the controls. He didn't cry, not because he wasn't breaking, but because crying would mean he was still human, still separate from the shadows that now curled beneath his skin. The photograph stopped falling. The silence returned. Elias sat alone in the confessional, the envelope still untouched beside him, its wax seal warm like skin. He hadn't opened it because he already knew what was inside. Not words, not prophecy, permission. That's what it felt like. The final key to become something he never wanted, but was always meant to be. He pressed his forehead to the wooden wall and felt breath on the other side. Not air, breath. Something was alive behind that partition, something ancient, and it was waiting for his voice. A phrase his mother once said returned like a ghost. "There are bloodlines made of silence, Elias, and every silence has a price." He thought of the boy in the tunnel, the girl with the mercury tokens, the veiled woman, his own mother, hiding him in plain sight. None of them were crazy. They were passengers, people who saw too much and kept quiet until it killed them from the inside. And now, he was the last one left. He picked up the envelope, hands trembling. This wasn't about belief anymore. It was about continuity. Because if he opened it, he wouldn't just inherit a truth. He'd erase every lie that let him live a peaceful life. If this happened to someone close to you, what would you believe? Comment below. The seal cracked with a softness that betrayed its century of silence. Elias peeled open the flap with shaking fingers and pulled out a single sheet of paper. No title, no date, just a sentence, handwritten in a looping, near-sacred calligraphy. The city above was built to forget the one below. His pulse slowed. Another line faded into view beneath the first, as if breathed onto the page. You were born in the forgotten city. He dropped the letter. It didn't hit the ground. It hovered, spinning in the air like caught in a slow tide, then dissolved into dust. The confessional faded around him. The subway melted. No train sounds, no wind, just the low groan of memory waking up. He stood now, in a city beneath New York, identical but wrong, a place of ruins dressed in modern skin, windows flickered with scenes from the past, rituals, disappearances, masked gatherings at midnight beneath train stations. He walked through an alley where walls breathed, a hotel lobby where no one moved, just statues with familiar faces, his mother, his grandfather, himself. A woman stepped forward from the shadows, veiled again, but this time her face was visible. It was his mother, younger, almost his age. Tears traced down her cheeks like wax from a dying candle. You shouldn't have remembered, she whispered, but you always would. It's in our blood. It's what made you leave. He stumbled backward. Leave? You thought you moved to New York to start a new life, Elias, she said, but no one ever comes here to begin. Her voice fractured. They come here to return. The world around him pulsed as if stitched together by breath and memory instead of time and space. Elias looked at his mother, young, haunting, real. But the more he stared, the more her face began to shift. Slightly, subtly, the curve of her jaw, the depth of her eyes. It was his face. The same bone, the same fear, wearing the mask of a woman who had once died to protect him. Or had she? The hotel lobby twisted. The chandeliers above flickered, each bulb glowing not with light, but visions. A boy crawling through subway vents, a woman giving birth in an underground train car, a man whispering prayers into a rusted intercom. Every image had the same face, his, worn across generations, and in every scene the same word painted on Tigstoas. He wall, chambers. He stumbled back into the hall. Footsteps followed, but they didn't sound like footsteps. They sounded like his own thoughts, echoing out loud. He passed a cracked mirror. For 1 second, he wasn't alone in his reflection. It showed 3 versions of him, child, man, old, all watching each other, all trapped. A sound shattered the silence, a train horn, deep beneath the floor, shaking the walls, and a voice, not from outside but inside his chest. Your birth was not the beginning. It was the continuation. His knees buckled. All this time, he thought the darkness hunted him, followed him. But now, he saw it. He was never running away. He was running in place. And the city was running with him. The floor beneath him pulsed like a heartbeat. No tiles, just flesh like stone, warm and breathing. The underground air tightened. From deep within the city's buried veins, a voice rose, not spoken, not heard, just known. You may return to the surface, Elias, but you will forget. He spun around. The woman, his mother, His mirror, whatever she truly was, stood in front of a rusted elevator door with no buttons. Her eyes were glazed over, as if seeing something far beyond him. "Forget what?" Elias whispered, but he knew the answer. Everything. The letters, the tunnel, the boy, the girl with mercury eyes, the photograph in the confessional, the haunting beneath Grand Central, the word Chambers. All of it would vanish, sealed behind whatever spell this city of memory used to protect itself. "And if I stay?" he asked. The woman reached into her coat and pulled out something small, heavy. It clinked in her hand like metal and bone. She dropped it into his palm. A key, old, cold, and engraved with the same glyph that appeared on the tunnel wall where he first met the boy. "If you stay," she said, "you become what your blood remembers." He looked down the hole. Everything was silent now, but not dead. The city was listening. Not a trap, a test. He closed his fingers around the key. And for the first time since arriving in New York, he didn't feel like a visitor. He felt like a door, waiting to be opened. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just closed his hand tighter around the key. The metal seared into his skin, not from heat but recognition. It knew him, or worse, it had always been his. The woman, no longer just his mother, not anymore, stepped aside. Behind her, the elevator door groaned open with a mechanical sigh that sounded like breathing through stone. Inside, darkness, not absence, presence, a place that waited. He stepped in. As the door shut, he saw himself reflected in the brushed steel walls. Dozens of versions, from different years, different eras. Same eyes, same fear, same fate. He reached for the panel. No buttons, just one inscription etched into the surface. "All cities begin below." The descent was silent. Not even the illusion of motion, only the sensation of being peeled away from time itself. When the door reopened, he stood in a chamber so vast, so old, it made the subways above feel like scaffolding. Hundreds of symbols pulsed along obsidian walls, and in the center, a circular altar of dark stone, floating inches above the ground. A book rested on it, bound in iron, sealed with blood. His name was carved into the spine. As he stepped forward, the air changed, warm, thick. Voices began to whisper again, from the rails, from the cracks in the floor, from inside his own memory. "This is not your story," they whispered. "You are the story." He opened the book. Inside, no pages, only a mirror. And behind his reflection, shadows began to move. The shadows behind the mirror didn't attack. They watched. Dozens, hundreds, maybe more. Eyes without pupils, and faces without time. Their presence pressed against the walls like centuries begging to breathe again. And Elias, standing at the altar, finally understood. These weren't demons. They were memory. All those who had chosen to remember. The cult wasn't a group. It was a cycle. A lineage of witnesses. Each one offered the same key, the same choice. Most turned back. Elias hadn't. That made him more than a man. It made him a gate. The altar beneath him began to crack. The mirror inside the book shimmered once, then liquefied. He reached forward, not to touch it, but to place his palm inside it. It burned, not from fire, from truth. In that final moment, he saw the surface world one last time. Streets pulsing with life, unaware of what churned beneath. He saw the boy with the strange eyes, the girl with the silver crucifix, the man who jumped in 1903, all standing at the edge of memory, waiting for him to choose. "You can go back," the city whispered, "but you will never matter again." Elias smiled. Tears slipped down his cheeks, not from fear, but from clarity. He wasn't here to expose a mystery. He was here to become one. And as he stepped into the reflection, the book slammed shut. The chamber sealed. The elevator vanished. The rails above whispered something new now. His name, woven into every passing train's rumble. Another man would check into that hotel room. Another would vanish. But none would ever open the mirror again. If this series moved you, hit like, subscribe to Mystery Cults, and share it with someone who loves the unexplained.